What if I told you that good and evil don't actually exist? That they aren't some cosmic forces fighting a battle, but are just ideas that we, humans, made up? For our entire lives, we're told there's a right and a wrong, a light and a dark. But where did that rule book come from? If we remove God, gods, or any supernatural beings from the equation, does our entire moral compass just break and spin wildly? Today, we're diving deep into the one invention that shaped all of human civilization, the invention of good and evil. To understand where morality comes from, we have to go way, way back, before cities, before writing, before religion as we know it. Imagine a small group of our early human ancestors, maybe 50 or 100 people, trying to survive on the savannah. Life is tough. There are predators, food is scarce, and the elements are harsh. In this world, what's the single most important thing for survival? It's not being the strongest or the fastest. It's cooperation. A lone human is basically a walking lunchbox for a saber-toothed cat. But a group of humans working together, they can hunt mammoths, protect each other, and raise their children safely. Cooperation is our superpower. And baked into our DNA through millions of years of evolution are the basic ingredients for this cooperation. Things like empathy, the ability to feel what someone else is feeling. When you see a friend trip and fall, you flinch. That's empathy. It's a building block. Another ingredient is fairness. We have a deep, instinctual sense of it. Scientists have shown this in other primates, our closest relatives. There's a famous experiment with capuchin monkeys. You put two monkeys in side-by-side cages where they can see each other. You give them both a small rock. If they hand the rock back to you, you give them a treat. At first, you give both of them a slice of cucumber. They're both happy. They hand over the rock, they get their cucumber. It's a fair trade. But then you change the deal. One monkey hands you a rock and gets the same old cucumber. The monkey next to it, though, hands you a rock and gets a juicy, sweet grape. A grape is like monkey champagne. The first monkey sees this. It looks at its boring cucumber, it looks at the other monkey munching on a grape, and it gets angry. It literally throws the cucumber back at the researcher. It starts shaking the cage. It's furious. Why? Because it's not fair. It did the same work but got a worse reward. That feeling, that raw sense of injustice, is not something we learned from a holy book. It's a gut feeling, an ancient instinct that helps social groups stick together. Cheaters and freeloaders disrupt the group. So we evolved to spot and reject unfairness. So, in these early tribes, good was simple. What is good? Sharing your food with someone who is hungry, helping to defend the camp from a predator, taking care of a sick child. These are good actions because they strengthen the group and increase everyone's chances of survival. And what was evil or bad? Stealing food from someone else, refusing to help on a hunt, harming someone within the tribe for no reason. These actions are bad because they weaken the group and threaten its survival. Morality at its most basic level wasn't a divine command, it was a survival strategy. It was the set of rules that allowed us to not kill each other and work as a team. But here's where the problem starts. This built-in instinctual morality works great in a small group where you know everyone. You know who's a hard worker, who's a bit lazy, who you can trust. Your reputation is everything. If you act like a jerk, everyone will know, and you'll be pushed out, which was basically a death sentence. Anthropologists talk about something called Dunbar's number, which suggests a human can only maintain stable social relationships with about 150 people. So what happens when our groups get bigger? What happens when we stop being small bands of hunter-gatherers and start building villages, then towns, then massive cities with thousands, even tens of thousands of people? Suddenly, you're surrounded by strangers. You don't know them, and they don't know you. The old system of reputation and gossip doesn't work anymore. You could steal from a stranger on the other side of the town, and nobody in your circle would ever know. How do you get thousands of strangers to trust each other, to follow the same rules, and to cooperate on a massive scale to build things like irrigation systems or pyramids? The old instinct-based morality wasn't enough. It needed an upgrade. And this is the moment where humans get creative. We needed a new tool to bind us together, and the most powerful tool we ever invented was the story. We started telling big, overarching stories that everyone in the group could believe in. And the most effective of these stories involved all-seeing, all-powerful gods. Think about it. It's one thing to have a rule that says, "Don't steal." It's another entirely different thing to say, "The great God who created the heavens and the earth has declared, 'Thou shalt not steal.' And he is always watching you, even when no humans are around. If you break his rule, he will know, and you will face eternal punishment in the afterlife." Now that is a powerful motivator. This idea of a supernatural police force, a cosmic big brother, was a genius solution to the problem of large-scale cooperation. It makes people behave themselves not just because they fear punishment from other people, but because they fear punishment from a power that sees everything and can't be tricked. It created a common ground for millions of strangers. We might not know each other, but we both believe in the same God, follow the same rules, and fear the same punishment. It allowed us to build empires. And this is where we see the formal invention of good and evil. These concepts were written down. They were codified in religious texts like the Bible, the Quran, the Vedas. They were written into legal codes like the famous Code of Hammurabi from ancient Babylon with its eye for an eye system of justice. Good was no longer just what was helpful for the tribe, it was what was obedient to God. Evil was no longer just what was harmful to the tribe, it was sin, a defiance of the divine order. These invented systems worked incredibly well. They gave societies a stable moral foundation that allowed them to grow and prosper. But they also came with a side effect. People forgot they were invented. These human-made rules started to be seen as absolute, objective truths handed down from the cosmos. The idea that morality comes only from God became so deeply ingrained in our cultures that many people today can't even imagine morality without God. They ask, if you don't believe in God, what stops you from robbing and killing? And this brings us to the key moment, the turning point in our story. We're now living in an age of science and reason. We understand evolution. We understand psychology. We can look back at history and see how these moral codes developed. We can see that they were practical tools created by humans to solve social problems. So, if we realize they were invented, does that mean we can just throw them away? If there's no divine punishment, is everything permitted? The answer, from an atheistic perspective, is a clear and resounding no. And this is the most important part. Understanding that morality is a human invention doesn't destroy it. It empowers us. It places the responsibility for it squarely on our shoulders. Think about the rule, don't murder. A religious person might say they don't murder because God forbids it. But an atheist doesn't need that. We don't avoid murder because we're afraid of going to hell. We don't murder because we can empathize with the victim. We can imagine the terror and pain of their final moments. We can understand the devastating grief their family and friends will feel. We can recognize that a society where people murder each other is a terrifying and broken society that nobody wants to live in.
The reason the rule exists, to prevent suffering and social collapse, is still completely valid even if you remove the supernatural story that was originally wrapped around it. The foundation is still there. That ancient, evolved instinct for empathy and fairness is still running in our source code. What we're doing now is building a more modern moral operating system on top of that old foundation. This is often called secular humanism. It's a worldview that says we can be good without God. Our morality isn't based on ancient texts or divine commands, but on reason, empathy, and a shared goal of promoting human flourishing and reducing suffering.
We are the authors of our moral code. This means we can also be the editors. We can look at the moral rules we inherited from the past and ask, do these still make sense? Do they lead to a better, fairer world for everyone? Some ancient rules were designed for a different time and led to horrible outcomes, like the justification for slavery, the subjugation of women, or the persecution of people with different beliefs. As we understand more about the world and about ourselves, we can update our morality. We can recognize that compassion shouldn't just be for our tribe, but for all of humanity. We can expand our circle of empathy to include people of different races, different countries, and even other species. So, to wrap this all up, where do good and evil come from? They didn't come from the heavens or the underworld. They came from us. They started as simple, evolved survival instincts that helped our ancestors cooperate in small tribes, empathy, fairness, reciprocity. These were the basic building blocks. As our societies grew into massive, complex civilizations, we needed something more. So we invented grand stories, religions, and laws to unite millions of strangers under a common moral code. We created the concepts of objective good and evil, often backed by the idea of an all-seeing God, to keep society stable. And now, in the modern world, we're entering a new phase. By understanding the human origins of morality, we can take ownership of it. We don't need to fear that society will crumble without God. The foundations of our morality, our empathy, and our reason are still here. We invented the idea of good and evil to help us survive and thrive. And now it's our job to continue refining that invention to create the best possible world for everyone.